I'm going to continue our series in worship next Sunday and conclude it then. But this week, as I was in prayer, I felt like God just dropped a word in my spirit that I need to give you this morning. And so is it okay if we call an audible and just kind of change directions for a second? My word for the year is hear and obey. And so when I feel like God speaks to me, my job is just to walk in obedience and to give it. So I pray that I can give this to you the way he gave it to me, because it was just real life-changing for me this week. And so I want to read to you Philippians chapter 4, verse 11. Paul is writing this from a prison cell. And he says these incredible words. He says, I'm not saying these things because I'm in need, for I've learned to be content whatever the circumstance. Now that should get your attention right away, because I think we're all trying to figure out the solution to that problem, right? How can I be content and satisfied in any season? Not just when everything's going good. I mean, even when I'm in a jail cell, even when things are crazy, how can I be content? He says, I figured it out. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. Whether I'm well-fed or I'm hungry, whether I'm living in plenty or I'm living in poverty, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That's not just a little verse you write on your Nike sneakers so you can lift some weight. There's a lot more weight to it. God wants to give you strength for every season and circumstance today. And I just feel like there are some of you here today that you're kind of caught in the tension of what it looks like to live in faith, believing God for some breakthrough in your life, and then also living in the triumphs and the victories that he's promised you. Where do I find peace in the midst of all of that? So that's what we're gonna talk about today. I wanna pray for you. Father, in the mighty name of Jesus, I just ask that your spirit would fill this room with wisdom and revelation. God, we need a word from you. Not information, but impartation that leads to transformation. So God, would you give me the grace to preach this message the way that you gave it to me? Would you give us grace to hear and to receive it, not just as a word, but something that would make a way in our lives. God, we love you, and we're so thankful for everything that you're doing in Jesus' mighty name. And all God's people said, amen, amen, amen. Well, why don't you do this? As you find your seats, why don't you high five 3 people and tell them enough is enough. Go ahead and tell 3 people enough is enough, y'all. Enough is enough. Well, I got a pastor's confession to make. Can I be honest with you in church this morning? Got a confession. I just, transparency and honesty is a really important value here at our church. And so I just want to be, I want to be 100. And I want to tell you what's really going on. I told my board I was going to share this with you guys today. But I gotta come clean. I don't, how do I say this? I don't like to share my food. I've been holding it in too long, and I gotta tell y'all, I don't like sharing my food, okay? I'm not a food sharer. I love my wife. My beautiful wife is here, Trin. Everybody say hi to my wife. I love her. I don't like to share food. She had to learn this the hard way, especially when it comes to French fries. Listen, I know exactly how many French fries. I have been perfecting this equation and this calculation my whole life, okay? I know exactly how many French fries I need to be fully satisfied. I order exactly what I need to be filled because I know exactly how much is enough for me. Now, what I don't know is how much is enough for the both of us. Now, listen, you can have all the fries in the world. I will buy you as many fries as you want. When I ask you if you're hungry for fries, I will get you all the fries. What I can't do is have you picking fries off of my plate, because I have calculated the exact amount of fries I need, including the bonus fry at the bottom of the bag that you didn't think about. I know it's in there. I know exactly how much is enough. Come on, can I get a witness for a second? I know exactly how much is enough for me. I grew up in an Italian home. If you didn't get your food first, you didn't eat. You got to get your food right away, You got to speak up. And I have realized that sometimes my eyes are a little bit bigger than my stomach. Come on, you ever? Growing up, we didn't get to go out to eat much. We ate at home. My mom would cook meals, but on, random times, sometimes we would go out to eat, and it was a big deal. We'd go out to one of my favorite places, the Golden Corral. Y'all know the Golden Corral? I love I don't know why people hate on Golden Corral. I love the Golden Corral. It was either Golden Corral or the Sizzler. Y'all remember Sizzler? Some of y'all had Hometown Buffet. We didn't have that in New York, but we had Sizzler, we had Golden Corral. And I love those places because those were buffets. You could get all the food. There was never a shortage. But I would always do this thing where I know I could go back and get seconds, but it didn't matter. The first round, I needed to get like 5 plates and pack everything on there. And oftentimes, I'll get more food than I needed because I thought what I had was enough, but it was more than enough. Enough is kind of an abstract idea when you really think about it, right? Like enough is kind of ever evolving in your life because what used to be enough for you seems like it's not even close to enough now. Right, you remember when you were single, rocking it by yourself? You know, what was enough back then, it felt like enough, but now you're married, you got kids. When I first moved to Sacramento, I was single, and I moved in, the first place I lived here was, I lived in a tiny home. Did y'all know this? I lived in a 20-foot by 20-foot tiny home. That was enough for me. As a single guy, I didn't need much. I got 1 plate and 1 mug. That was enough. That's all I needed. Now we have like 500 mugs in our house. I don't know. Every pastor's appreciation comes around. I get like 50 mugs at a time. And listen, I love the mugs. I collect them, but I only need, like 1 mug was enough for me. But now it feels like it's never enough. Like enough, you know, what used to be enough back then feels like it's not even close to enough now. Enough is enough until it's not, right? Or enough is enough until inflation. Like what used to be enough, man, it just goes so fast now. It's crazy because I think many of us, we're asking that question in our life. When is enough enough? When is it more than enough? And this past week, I was spending some time in prayer because Pastor Q and I, we got off a call and he was sharing some things with me, some really cool things that are coming, I believe, in the future, some open doors that I believe that God is presenting for us as a church. I believe things that we've been praying for, things we've been believing for years. I believe they're around the corner. There's some cool opportunities for expansion. Our church is growing. God is moving and things are happening. And so, you know, it's kind of still in that stage where I'm not necessarily comfortable sharing all of the details with you because it's not set in stone, but some things are happening. Somebody say God's moving. God's moving and some things are happening and I'm looking at it. And, you know, in the beginning stages of whenever God starts doing something, it's really easy to see the impossibilities of that thing, right? It's really easy to identify what you don't have so that you can get to where God's calling you to be. And so Pastor Q and I, we were talking on the phone and we were talking through some of the things that we believe as a church we're gonna step into here in the next few months. And they're really incredible things, really big open doors. But how many of you know when God gives you territory, it always comes with a cost? And every promise has a price tag. And so my mind immediately starts going into, okay, what's this gonna look like? What's this gonna cost? And how we gotta raise the money and then the giving and all this. And so I've learned in my life that when God presents impossibilities in front of me, I need to go straight to the place of prayer. Because if I go to where I wanna go, this is a dark place, y'all. Sometimes this is a really dark place. Some of y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. You have a doctorate in overthinking. You could teach a college course on overthinking. Come on, some of y'all, this is a dangerous, dark place. And if you let your thoughts go here before you take it to the place of prayer, it can get really discouraging. But prayer is not my last resort. It's my first response. It's my priority. I've learned the moment that something impossible comes across my desk, I got to bring it to the guy in charge. And so I go into the place of prayer. I go outside into my backyard and I start praying and I'm doing my thing. You know, I'm pacing. And when I pray, you know, I really pray. Holy Ghost. And I know how to pray, right? You know, so I enter his courts with thanksgiving. God, I want to thank you for all the blessings in my life. I want to thank you for the trees and I want to thank you for the birds. And oh God, I'm going off and I'm praising God for all the things, you know, because I want to make sure I get on God's good side before I start asking for things, you know. And then I say, God, you know, I got this thing. And I don't know how we're going to do this. God, this is impossible. God, we don't have the resources. We don't have the money. But I know you're a miracle working God. And so I start praying. And then I said this prayer that I've said this my whole life. I've said these words in my relationship. I've said these words in my ministry. I've said these words in my career, in my future. I've always said this. I said, God, I'm asking that you would give more than enough so I wouldn't have to worry about anything. Anybody ever prayed that prayer before? God, would you give me more than enough so I don't have to worry about anything? And I think many of us, when we think about our lives and our prayers to God, of what we're asking him to do for us, when we ask God to bless us, I'm gonna be honest, I don't think that the majority of us in the room or those who are watching online right now, when you ask God to give you things, you're asking because you're greedy. I really don't believe that. I'm not saying that some of us don't struggle with greed, but I don't think it really ever starts there. I think that's a learned behavior. But I think many of us, it's not that we're greedy. I think we just don't want to worry. Right? I've never really cared a lot about having lots of money, being rich. When I was a kid, I never thought about those things. But my prayer has always been this: God, I'm not trying to be wealthy. I just don't want to have to worry. Just give me what I need so I don't have to worry. Give me more than enough so I don't have to be anxious about the things that I'm unsure of. Anybody relate with those prayers? It got me thinking as I was praying, God, you're the God of more than enough. Come on, you're more than able. As I start singing that song, I'm like, oh man, there's a word. And then in the middle of my prayers, God just interrupts me. You ever get interrupted by the Holy Spirit when you're praying? Now, you may say, well, what does that look like for you? It's internal, but I felt like God pressed pause on my prayers for a second. He said, hey, hold on. I need to talk to you about something for this prayer that you're praying. And he said to me, Jared, he said, I promised you peace. And whatever problems that you face, whatever pain you're walking through, I said I would give you peace. And he said, I promised that I would provide. In fact, that's my name, Jehovah Jireh. God, you are my provider. You will always provide for me. He said, I promised you I would do that. I will give you peace and I will provide. But I'm not interested in dropping you off in the land of more than enough and eliminating your need to ever ask me for anything ever again. And when God said that, I kind of got a little offended. You ever pray and feel like you heard God speak to you and you didn't know if it was you or if it was God? This one I had no confusion about. I knew this one was God because there ain't no way I was thinking that. I thought my prayer was real great and spiritual, give me more than enough so I don't have to worry about anything. He said, I don't want to give you more than enough because your idea of more than enough will eliminate your need to ever trust me and ask me for anything again. So once I picked myself up off the floor, got over my offense with God, he continued. He said, listen, Jared, if I remove the tests and trials from your life, there would be no need for you to trust me with your life. And I didn't call you to a life that feels good. I called you to a life of faith. Yeah, I didn't respond like that. But I did realize that maybe what I've been asking God for is not necessarily what he's interested in giving me. Not that God doesn't want to provide and give us peace, but maybe my idea of that has been misconstrued by the things of this world. I think the reason why this is relatable is because it's built into the human psyche. It's the human condition to try to eliminate anything that we can't see or anything that is unknown, because unknowns lead to anxiety. As human beings, we long for predictable experiences. We long to know exactly what to expect before we ever enter into something. That's why Starbucks was so successful, because Starbucks understood the predictable experience symbol, and so therefore they created a store that you could go to one store in Washington and another store in New York and have the same experience. You know what to expect. That's what we long for. Some of us, we want a Starbucks experience with God. We want to know what to expect, when to expect it, and how we're going to get there, how it's all going to go. And God said, I never asked you to live a life of predictability. I called you to walk by faith. I called you to follow me even when you don't know what's in front of you. But let's be real. We all desire to graduate from a life of faith. Well, not me, Pastor. Well, you remember how we call it is childlike faith? Many of us, we view childlike faith as childish. Oh, that's good for the kids at VBX. Can I tell you one thing? It wasn't hard preaching to those kids. It wasn't hard preaching to them because I didn't have to work through years of jaded unbelief. We view faith as childish. We love that for you. That's cute for you. But come on, I've been around and I know what's really going on. And so we want to graduate from a life of faith, but that's just not how this thing works. Faith is integral into who you are called to be and how you are called to follow Jesus. The problem is that we're living in this tension between living on faith and living in the fullness and the fulfillment of what we've been believing God for. And I got this picture. I want to put it up there on the screen for you. I got this picture in my mind as I was praying that kind of represents what I feel like is the dichotomy in our faith journey, because many of us, we feel like we're living in the tension between a life of expectation and then a life of absolution. A life of believing God and asking in faith for the things that he's promised us, and then finally living in the fulfillment of those promises. Both are realities of our lives. The problem is, where is the peace in the midst of this spectrum? Because I don't know that we have peace. When we're living in faith, come on, when you're living by faith, let's just be real, it sometimes feels like you're living on fumes. Like I'm running on empty, but hey, I got a word from God. It's all I got. I got a word. I'm just showing up, and I've got hope, and I've got trust in my life, but I ain't got much else. My bank account is empty. My relationship's falling apart, but you know what? I got faith. And it's spiritual, but it feels a little bit sorrowful. Feels like I'm running on empty. Feels like I got nothing left. And you know, this is a special place to be. Because when all you've got is God, I mean, there's something unique there, right? You're in prayer every day. You're showing up to church every week. You're on Wednesday night. You're going to FTX on Thursday. You broke into VBX again, hands laid on you, because you just get whatever you can get. When you're living on faith, it's like running on fumes, but you know, it's you're believing God for something. Come on, anybody believe in God for something you've yet to see in your life? You're just trusting. You got a word, but it hasn't happened yet? Here's what I want you to understand about faith. Faith is fundamental in allowing God's flow into your life. It says in 2 Corinthians 5:7, for we walk by faith. It doesn't say we stand by faith. You walk by faith. You move forward by faith, not by what you feel, not by what you see. But Pastor, it's dark out. I can't see. The word of God is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. I got faith in what God says so I can move forward even when I don't feel it. But isn't it God's grace that moves in my life? Absolutely. But you can't access that grace without faith. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8, it says, for by grace you've been saved through faith. You access the grace of God, the miraculous flow, through believing and trusting even when you don't see it. In my Bible reading plan this week, I read this story, and man, it just jumped out the page. And have you ever read the Bible, you felt like you came out with more questions than you had answers? Sometimes I'm like, man, my head's spinning. Wait, hold on. Y'all went too fast. I need to just understand. There's this story, and it's so, man, I could spend like a month just in this one story. But Acts chapter 14, it's about Paul's ministry, and it says, in Lystra, there sat a man who was lame. He'd been that way from birth and never walked. He listened to Paul as he was speaking. Paul looked directly at him, saw that he had faith to be healed, and said, stand up on your feet. At that moment, the man jumped up and began to walk. What did Paul see that showed him that this man had faith? I don't know what it was, but at least he saw something. There was something in this man that had faith that said, I know I've never walked before. I know I'm running on fumes. I know I ain't got nothing right now, but I believe even though I've never walked a day in my life, today could be the day I take my first step. Today could be the day God raises me up and lifts me into the place I've been believing for. You can't experience the flow of God without faith in your life. And that's why the season of living on faith is such a special time, because we trust in God even when we don't see it. There's something so special about that season. Jesus even says, blessed are those who believe and have not seen. You are blessed by believing even though you have not beheld the promises come to pass yet. But how many of you have ever experienced that season shift where God finally authorizes the overflow in your life? Come on, how many of you have ever experienced the things you've been begging God for all of a sudden, and it happens all of a sudden, but God begins to bless you, pour out his promises, and now you were once in the valley, but you're on the mountaintop. And in this season, everything's changed. I finally understand when the psalmist said, surely goodness and mercy will follow me. It's because when I'm here, I'm like a magnet for God's favor. It's like all these things just start coming to me. I'm blessed. I'm highly favored. Favor ain't fair. And there's something about being full. It's the fulfillment of God's promise. I'm living in the land flowing of milk and honey. I finally got that job I've been praying for. The spouse I've been believing for finally showed up. Come on, find your buoy too. God made a way when there was no way. And I'm living in the fullness of the promises of God, and it's so amazing. And this is a special season too, because it's in this place that we realize how good God is, how gracious he is. It's in that place that we realize Philippians 4:19 that says, my God will supply every need according to his riches and glory. Ephesians 3:20, now to him who is able to do exceedingly above and beyond what we could ask, think, or imagine. Luke chapter 6, verse 38, give and it will be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over. It will be poured into your lap. I'm living in the fullness. Oh man, I love the mountaintop. I love when what I've been begging God for, I'm being blessed with. And some of y'all are complaining about the prayers you prayed being answered. Come on, I know that baby's keeping you up every night. Come on, Isaac, I know that baby's been keeping you up, but you prayed for that baby. Come on, that is an answer to prayer. That is a blessing from the Lord. But isn't it interesting that in the season of full, we tend to feel close to God because we're surrounded by all his blessings? But we spend less time with God. I find it so interesting because when I'm living on faith, I don't feel close to God. In fact, sometimes I feel like I'm so far from God. But it's when I feel far from God, I'm pursuing his presence more than ever. I'm in church every week. I'm in prayer every day. But when I finally get what I've been praying for, and I finally am blessed with the things I've been asking for, all of a sudden I don't feel the need to enter into his presence every day. I don't feel the need to go to church. What was once a week is now once every few months. I don't feel a need to tithe anymore because I already got my financial breakthrough. Why would I need to keep doing that? And I think it's in the season of overflow that it's easy when we're blessed to forget the one who blessed us in the first place. And I think it's also in the season of overflow that when I'm blessed, the dream that I once had that has now come to fruition is no longer a dream. It's turned into disillusionment because what I thought would finally fulfill me is still leaving me empty. Have you ever gotten what you were going after And once you got it, you weren't satisfied. You thought back there that once you got here, it would be more than enough. But once you got enough, enough is never enough. See, this is the human condition, that we are desiring more, and our desire for more, it's insatiable. Enough is never enough because the goalposts are always moving. This past week, I saw this TikTok of a guy named Rick Rubin. He's one of the greatest music producers of our generation. He's produced some of the greatest artists, rock music, hip hop. I mean, he's unbelievably talented. And he was being interviewed on the mind of an artist. And he was saying, he's like, have you ever met somebody who's been working for a goal for 20 years? Day in, day out, they sacrifice, they grind, they fight everything for this one goal. And finally, one day in their life, all of a sudden, things shift and that goal becomes a reality. And they are still unhappy. He says, this is why you will find so many artists, you'll find so many celebrities, you'll find millionaires and billionaires that are unsatisfied and unfulfilled and unhappy with their lives. Why? Because they thought they knew what they wanted. And this guy who doesn't even know Jesus, he said, we don't know what we want. And so we'll spend all of our lives pursuing after this goal, and once we get the goal, what we thought would be enough, it's never enough. So the person asked him, what is the secret to finding satisfaction? This guy doesn't know Jesus. He says, I don't really know. What I think, maybe it's something outside of us. Maybe it's something spiritual. Maybe it's something we don't even realize, but I don't think that we can find that satisfaction in accomplishing our goals or even in the pursuit of them. There's got to be something internal. And I think that that's where so many of us are, even in our faith journey with the Lord, that we're stuck in this tension between living on faith and living on full, and we don't have peace in either place. Because can I just be 100% with you? Sometimes my prayer life doesn't give me peace. I know you're a better Christian than me. Now, I know you're more spiritual than me. And every time you pray, you just elevate to the heavens and you just have so much peace. But I'll just be honest, sometimes I get more angry when I start praying. And I start going through it. I'm like, oh my God, I gotta get. Because sometimes my prayers, they're all jacked up and they're not even God focused, they're me focused. So I don't have peace here because I don't have the promise, and I know that I'm living in this place of spiritual frustration. I've yet to see the promises fulfilled. But over here, when I'm living in abundance, can I just be real? I still have anxiety, sometimes more so. The test of success is greater than the test of lack. Because when all you've got is God, it's really easy to hold on to him. What happens when he gives you what you've been asking for? Here's why it produces anxiety when we have abundance. Now you've got to keep it. Enough was enough when enough was all you had. But now that you have more than enough, it's really hard to go back. And so what do we do to try to maintain and keep the success that we've built? That's when we start to cut corners. That's when we start to cheat and lie to maintain what we had, because I'd rather lie and keep my success than maintain my integrity and lose it all. So I ain't got no peace here. I've got no peace in poverty, and I've got no peace in provision. Yet Jesus promised that he would give us peace. I want to read you what he said in John chapter 14, verse 27. Jesus says to his disciples, he says, peace I leave with you, my peace I give you, not as the world gives. This is a key to understanding the peace that God gives, because the peace that God gives is not the peace that the world can offer. The peace that the world can offer comes from provision, from having plenty. if I know I've got this much in my account, come on, some of you, as long as you see that number above a certain amount, you've got peace. Can we all just agree that if the past 3 years have taught us anything, is that 401k can fade really quickly. And yet your peace is in some monetary number. Your peace is in the stuff in your home. Your peace is in the opportunities that your career is presenting you. Those things fade. So what is the peace that God gives versus the peace that this world gives? And I think this is the tension I was stuck in this past week as I prayed, God, give me more than enough so I won't have to worry about anything. I was reverting to this idea that if I have enough money in our account and if we have enough coming into the church and we can afford to do these things, and then I won't have to worry about anything. And the Lord had to correct me in saying, Jared, peace does not come from the provision you think you need. There is peace that surpasses understanding. There is peace I have to give you that goes beyond what makes sense in your current circumstance. And I think that the formula that solves the tension between living on faith and living on full is found in the book of Philippians. You see, while in prison, Paul writes one of the most powerful paragraphs on the tension between trusting God and triumphing in the promises he makes us. Philippians is believed to have been one of his last letters, which means it's some of his final words. And when somebody gives their final words, you pay attention, because this is the culmination of their wisdom, their life experience, and the Spirit of God that is speaking through Paul as he writes these words. Here's what he says in Philippians chapter 4 from a prison cell. He says, do not be anxious about anything. Now, I just get annoyed at that. That's like having an anxiety attack and somebody comes up to you and is like, don't worry about it. It's all good. I'm gonna punch you in your throat, okay? Get out of here, Paul. But you know what? He's saying this from a jail cell, so maybe he's got something to explain to us. He says, don't be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, presents your request to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your heart and minds in Christ Jesus. He says, don't worry about anything, but pray about everything. Now, this makes it sound like he's kind of vouching for living on faith, right? Like I'm here, I'm in a jail cell, don't worry about anything, pray about everything. But I think it's because of the way he words this portion of the paragraph. He clarifies what he's saying, because for you and I, it sounds like our lives are just meant to be lived from this place, just on fumes all the time and just hoping God will do something and praying and throwing it out there. And that's not what he's saying. Look at what he goes on to say in just a few verses later. He says, I'm not saying this because I'm in need. You're in prison, Paul. They're about to remove your head. And he's saying, I'm not saying this because I'm in need. I'm not running on empty. I'm not living on fumes. No. He says, I'm not saying this because I'm in need. I've learned to be content in whatever the circumstances. I know what it's to be in need, and I know what it is to be in plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether I'm well-fed or I'm hungry, plenty, or in poverty. I'm not saying this because I'm in a jail cell and I'm just struggling to survive and I'm hoping that God will do something. No, I've got peace. I've figured out the solution in every season. So it's not the place that determines my peace. I've figured out a way to have peace no matter what. And here's what I've come to realize. Whether you are living in poverty or you are living in provision, it doesn't matter. God's peace is God's promise towards you. You don't have to wait to get to a different place to have peace in your life. Peace does not come through provision. I know you think you'll be at peace when God gives you what you're asking for. You will not. Peace does not come from provision. And listen, peace does not come from poverty either. Some of you idolize self-righteousness. And you idolize how much you give, how much you serve, how much you honor God. That doesn't give peace either. That leads to false humility that is pride, not peace. Just like abundance can be your idol. And that's what we've made abundance in our lives. We don't worship God, we worship what God gives us. And when he gives us a lot, we feel at peace. No. Peace does not come from the provision of his hand. Peace comes from the person of Jesus. Here's what Paul is saying. My power is that I'm at peace. And the most powerful person in the room is a person at peace. God dropped this in my spirit right as I was leaving my house this morning. Rosa Parks was so powerful, not just because she took a stand, but because she was unbothered. I know where you want to put me. I know what you say I am. I know where you think I should be, but I am at peace with my decision. I am at peace with who God has called me to be. I am at peace with where I'm at right now. I am unbothered by what you're trying to put on me. And some of us, we're trying to take a stand, but we're still anxious inside. The most powerful person in the room is somebody at peace. And it is the hottest commodity in our generation right now because ain't nobody got it. Nobody has any peace because we think peace will come from one of these two places. But here's what I want you to know. You can rest not once you finally receive the resources you've been asking for, but because you are in relationship with the Prince of Peace who goes with you in every situation. This is why the psalmist said, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil because you are with me. I'm not out the valley yet. I'm still in the place of faith. I'm still struggling right now, but you know what? You're with me. And I could make my bed in heaven and I could have all the blessings of God, but they don't faze me because you're with me. If I lose everything I have today, if I lose my house, if my 401k eliminates, if everything disappears, my peace does not go with it. My peace is established in the Prince of Peace who is unchanging. He says, I've learned the secret to be content in every season. And then he says this, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me. You know how you and I read that verse? I can do all things once Christ gives me success. I can do all things once Christ makes me feel significant. I can do all things once Christ gives me what I'm asking for. Paul did not say, I can do all things because God gave me what I asked for. He says, I can do all things because God gave me strength to walk through whatever it is that I'm walking through. I have strength to walk through poverty. I have strength to walk through provision. I have strength to walk through the valley, and I have strength to walk on top of the mountain. I've got strength that comes in the Prince of Peace. He is who my peace rests in. So what is the solution to this life of peace? Because is it living on faith? Or is it living on full? Both are realities in your life, and you will be living in the tension between the two. But this is what the Lord spoke to me this week. The problem with this equation is that we're looking for solutions in unstable sources, changing seasons. Today, you might be living on faith, and tomorrow you might have the fulfillment of it. Today, you might have the fulfillment of every promise, and then tomorrow you might have to come back to the place of prayer and asking God once again. And if my faith is in full, those things will fade. And if my faith is in my faith will surely fail. But there is a God who is a firm foundation. And 1 Thessalonians 5:24 says this, the one who calls you is faithful and he will do it. So I may not have faith right now and I may not feel full right now, but I know this. No matter what I'm walking through, my God is faithful. My God is unchanging. And if my God is unchanging, my peace is established. I can rest in who God is no matter what the situation, no matter what the circumstances. God is faithful in every season. He never changes. And so when I prayed this prayer this week, and I said, God, I want more than enough so I don't have to worry about anything. He said to me, he said this, enough is enough. Do you remember that scripture when Paul has that thorn in his flesh? It's a symbol for the spiritual obstacle in his life, something that won't allow him to jump forward, or he kind of walks with a limp. And he says, I asked God, I was living in faith. I asked God to fulfill the promise to remove that thing. And God spoke to Paul. You remember what he said? He says, my grace is sufficient. In other words, he says this, I am enough for you. In other words, church, enough is enough. Christ is enough. He is sufficient for every season and every circumstance. If you don't have what you feel like you need right now, you have everything you need in the person of Jesus Christ. Every spiritual blessing in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus. And sometimes you think you know what you want and you know what you need, but Christ knows better. And if he gave you what you think you needed, maybe what you think is more than enough would actually lead to your frustration and your disillusionment. But here's what I want you to understand. In your journey with Jesus, you will never graduate from a life of faith. Faith is a requirement for following God. But you must graduate from a life of fear. And your fear of not enough, your fear of missing out, your fear of whatever the future holds, I want you to know this, Christ holds your future in his hands, and Christ is enough. Somebody say enough is enough.